Hi everyone, I'm Ehsan, co-founder of Functionland, where we are trying to create a better version of the cloud. And the problem that we are trying to address doesn't need much elaboration for the people in this room. It's what we call rental web, which has been the common theme in Web 2 and is now being even expanded to Web 3. Like, we humans are generating tons of data every second. Like, these data that we are creating, unless we organize and process it and transform it into knowledge, is of no use to us. And some of us here remember the early days where we were having these DVDs, like putting music, video, images on these DVDs. And we had these racks, and we used to write on the back of each DVD what each of those contained. This method of organizing data had a very serious shortcoming. Like, we had to sit behind a computer browsing images for hours to find that one single piece of image that we needed. But then we transferred everything to the cloud. Like, now I'm uploading everything on Google, and if I need a picture of my friend, I just search his name and the photo shows up like pretty organized and neat. But this new method also has a very big shortcoming. Now Google owns our data. They can charge us for the service that they provide, even if it's marketed as a free forever application. Like, that's what happened to Google Photos. They initially marketed it as a free forever application, and after we put years on years of photos there, and it was hard for us to switch, they announced that they are no longer offering the free tier. And YouTube as well. Like, this company's ad revenue is actually skyrocketing because of the creators who are putting content onto the platform. But they announced that they are no longer sharing the revenue of all the videos with the creators because some of them might not be eligible for participating in the YouTube Partners program. Or even some of the big companies whose software and product relies on the open source creations that are created for free and maintained by humble developers for years. And they are making millions of it without sharing a cent. So we are trying to resolve it, like, because besides what they are doing, the way that they are doing it is even worse. Like, they are using the parable of boiling frog problem. They offer you a product that looks balanced in the beginning, and when you start using it and lock more data in their service, they imbalance it toward their own benefit. We believe that's unacceptable, and now we have the tools to create a better alternative. We call this alternative blockchain-attached storage, which is an evolution of NAS with the good from both worlds of NAS and the cloud. It's powered by a peer-to-peer protocol, which we created, and it's called FULA protocol. Basically, it's a decentralized Google Cloud. So it allows us in this room to create a pool, a local pool between ourselves. And within this pool, we share our storage and back up each other's data and share our CPUs to run an AI algorithm, for example. In reciprocal transactions, which means for us, if we are all providing services to the pool, it can be at zero cost. Also, because it's local, the latency and the slowness is close to zero, and we can get data as fast or even better than cloud. So the software stack here is like what you see on the image. We kept the client and server model of Web 2 because of the storage, battery, and mobility limitations that we have. The servers are still needed to support the client server, the client device. So we kept the client server, but we replaced HTTP with libp2p. And we replaced the server, like one server, with a swarm of the devices in the backend. The client talks to the swarm of the devices, fetches data, or sends data. And also, like, now that the user has a hardware that is running a protocol, they can earn. So when I'm providing resources to the pool that is in this room, I'm earning for the resources that I share. Also for validating the transactions that happen in this pool. So I can either use the tokens that I earn to get more resources, to get more storage, or pay a developer for the application that I use. So I can use an application that is on this ecosystem for free and pay it with the tokens that I earned from sharing my resources, the resources of my hardware. Or watch a video and the creator of that video gets paid from the tokens. So in this way, like anyone who is sharing something, like either their storage, CPU, or a piece of code or a creation gets paid from the tokens. People who don't have the hardware needs to pay like us, like people who are next to this room, they pay us with tokens for what they need to use. And also to create this experience for the developers, we also developed the APIs. There is one big shortcoming that we saw in the Web3, which is the UI developers, like JavaScript developers, who are expert in creating applications. They are left out of Web3 because like they are not familiar with the language, with the backend, and they need to go through steep learning curves to create an application. So what we did is we packaged our protocol in a single library where a JavaScript developer can simply import it into their application and start building applications with their current knowledge. Like they can use commands that are familiar to them, like send file, receive file, use GraphQL to query like the data that is stored on the backend, and start creating application without any learning curve. Also because we want to save the user's hardware resources, like both the storage and compute. We want the hardware to be like, because most consumers, they don't have like really like expensive hardware. They have either a laptop or maybe a Raspberry Pi. So we wanted it to be runnable on a hardware as low power as a Raspberry Pi. That's why we designed our blockchain as a layer 3. And the way it works is when we create this pool here in this room, it also creates a local blockchain, a temporary chain. The data, that transactions that happen, gets recorded on this chain, but at the end of the day, it submits it wraps up the transactions and submits them to the parent chain. The parent chain can be like any bridge that we built, so it can be Polkadot, Polygon, even with the introduction of FVM Filecoin. So we submit the transactions to level 2, and then the consensus happens on level 2. This temporary chain gets erased at the end of the day, saving us our hardware resources like storage and compute. And like us developers, we don't care opening CMD and running a few lines of the code to turn our laptop into a backend, but a lot of consumers don't. So that's why we prepackaged everything into a single piece of hardware so that anyone who wants to join this network can simply purchase the hardware, plug it to the internet, and open their phone and start using the applications that are familiar to them, like these Photos, which is an alternative of Google Photos. It runs on this ecosystem, so we can create a pool, open our phone, use Photos, and we are like basically backing up each other's photos instead of Google. We are creating 2 more applications internally in partnership with Formidable Labs, which is a file manager, like a Google Drive thing, and a password manager. And then we have plans to onboard independent developers, like JavaScript developers, through hackathons and grants. Like these developers are amazing at creating applications, and we believe that we removed the barrier for them to create a dApp. So like we try to onboard them through hackathons initially. And also the hardware stack that we are building is open source. So like any hardware developer can create a tower for the hardware. It's not like a fixed storage device that the user need to decide at the beginning. Like I don't need to know how much storage I'm gonna need for 10 years from now. I can start with a single piece of tower, so with just one tower, and expand as we go. And it even gives you like some cool functionalities, like a controllable docking station. So the tower in the middle, that's a docking station that you can basically control from your phone, like connect the ports together and extend your laptop or your phone with it. And Like everything we do is open source, like it's on our GitHub, on Functionland GitHub, which we saw pretty good traction from the developers. We are children of Protocol Labs. We won the first place in Filecoin Hackathon. We opened a 1-month pre-order campaign on Indiegogo, and from the amount of devices we sold, like the initial, the minimum initial storage that the network will have is 1 petabyte. And we will expand from there. That's from the people who purchase the hardware. We also have our own NFT club, which is like elephants. And it's like, there are right now 500 of them that allows the early adopters to get some cool features from it. And as I said, like we are children of Protocol Labs, like we got backed and supported by Protocol Labs and Filecoin. And we got pretty good support from big VCs like Outlier Ventures and Techstars, who we got connected to very good mentors like Charles and Juan. And that's it. So if any questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you. Yes. The reason that it could not go well, like those are the things that we are like trying to consider, right? So one thing is security, right? So if I'm storing my files on your device and my neighbor's device, what happens if something goes wrong, like there is a security breach, right? But we are using the latest technologies for encryption. The worst case, if something happens, is if someone could hack the underlying protocols like P2P that we are using, which shouldn't be possible, probably my data would be the least worry of the world at that point. But yeah, like probably one thing that many people asked, like, what if I don't want to purchase the hardware? Like hardware is probably one downside for many people. But the thing is, to join this network, we want to minimize the barriers. So we want to provide you with a plug-and-play hardware, with a one-click installable script. But even if someone don't want to purchase the hardware, there is ways, like they can just join a pool of people who have the hardware. So that's it. Like we are trying to minimize the barriers, to minimize the downsides. But our code is open source. Like we welcome everyone to explore the codes, to bring like any shortcoming that they see to our attention, and we try to minimize it.
So why not make it like people can use phones as servers?
That's right, and that's what we are trying to avoid. So we try to keep the client-server model, and the reason behind it is because we carry our phones with us everywhere, right? So my phone has limited storage, like it's not as capable as my laptop or like a Raspberry Pi that I can extend the storage with an SSD. So it has limited capacity. I don't think many people want everything they have, like my years of photos, to be backed up on their phone, because that slows down the functionality, the main functionality of the phone. Also, what happens if I lose my phone? Like I've lost a server. It's not stationary. Like I'm taking it with me everywhere, which increases the risk of losing it or something happening to it. Like I'm browsing websites with this, which increases the risk of like getting hacked. Every day, also, like some new bug is found in the phone, and a new hack happens. So to avoid all those, we thought that the server is something we can't remove. We can decrease the specs of the server. We can make it like plug and play, decrease the barriers to entry for home server, but it needs to be there. There needs to be a stationary thing at everyone's home that supports their client. But one feature that we get is with this server is, as a developer, we do no longer, when we create an application, we no longer need to host users' data, which minimizes our liability as well as our costs, right? Right now, if I create an application, let's say like a like a platform, I need to host your data on my server and pay AWS. That's going to be eliminated in this new ecosystem because your server is only responsible for serving your data and your family. So it's like a small server for 5, 10 people. And the developer is like basically not responsible for your data. I hope that answered the question. Let me know if not. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, yeah. You can, like we closed the pre-order because we want to focus on shipping the first batch, which will be end of this year. After like early next year, we reopen it with a more structure where on our own website. Like for this round, we just used Indiegogo, which is like a third-party platform just to be quick and also to reach to the Web 2 people. Like we didn't want to focus on Web 3 people who are paying by crypto because we wanted to see if people like Web 2 people are basically understand the value in this server, and they did. Like they proved that it is. So we're gonna just ship the first batch by end of this year, then open our online sale next year. But the APIs are open, and you can go to docs.fx.land, see the APIs, like create some example applications, and basically turn your laptop in a node. And we'll actually launch our testnet soon, so then you can get the full experience of blockchain and the protocols. Yeah, you can do that. Like nothing we do is basically closed. Everything is open source. Even the designs that, like as I said, we partnered with Yves Behar, like one of the biggest designers, to create the hardware, but we made the designs open source. Like we didn't close anything. So a manufacturer in China even can create even the hardware, or someone can just purchase a Raspberry Pi, install the software, turn it into a node. And yeah, that everything is on our GitHub. Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for your attention.